General Hospital spoilers for Friday, May 2nd tease that Nina sits across from Carly in a nearly empty cafe, her hand gripping her cup as if trying to suppress the storm of anger brewing in her chest. Her voice drops, but her eyes shine with an unusual light, the light of determination and a desire for control. She begins telling Carly about the events of recent days. Developments that seemed insignificant at first but are gradually reshaping the power dynamics within their family. And it is in this story that Drew's name rings out like a sentence. Like a warning bell that they have underestimated a man who is no longer just a former soldier or businessman, but a strategist, silently advancing into the lives of those they love most. According to Nina, Willow, in a surprising move, signed a legal power of attorney, giving Drew guardianship of both Wiley and Amelia. A decision deemed in line with her health conditions and the desire for stability for the children in case of an emergency. But for Nina, this wasn't a sentimental decision. It was a calculated move. Because Drew is not only close to the children, but he also holds the power to make final decisions on all important matters concerning them, from education, medical care, living environment, to who is allowed contact with them. And for Nina, this is a direct threat, because she has never fully regained her legal place in Wiley's life after years of being stripped of her rights as a grandmother. Carly listens in silence, her gaze unwavering. Although her relationship with Nina has never been smooth, the tension that Drew is creating is something she cannot ignore. Drew was once someone she trusted, a partner, a friend during the most difficult times. But now, knowing that he holds the guardianship of 2 children with close ties to her, without any prior discussion or notification, Carly begins to feel as though she's being pushed out of a game she should have been designing. Drew has taken a step too far, and he's done it without her. Nina, sensing the growing cold anger in Carly's eyes, continues, this time not to tell a story, but to suggest a possibility. Perhaps it's time for both of them to put aside their personal differences and face a person who is manipulating from the inside. That if they allow Drew to continue, they will lose all access to the children, lose influence in important decisions, and eventually, lose their place in the children's lives, which have already been through so many family upheavals. And that's when a dangerous idea begins to take root. Nina doesn't say it outright, but the implication is clear: they need a story. A sequence of events. An action strong enough to stir public opinion, shake Willow's trust in Drew, and undermine his position as a trusted guardian. Carly, being someone who understands how media works, immediately grasps what Nina wants. Not a scandal too obvious, but something vague yet serious enough to make Willow reconsider. A piece of evidence showing that Drew isn't trustworthy. A shady financial connection, a wrong medical decision, or even an undisclosed personal relationship that could cause the public to question his ethical standing. From that moment, Nina and Carly are no longer 2 women in conflict over feelings and honor. They become allies, at least for a short time, united by a common goal: stop Drew before he consolidates more power. Because they know that once he has complete control over Wiley and Amelia, they won't have any chance to alter the future of those children. And when a man like Drew, once a pawn, now wanting to be the main player, dares to enter the influence zones of both Carly and Nina at the same time, he will have to face the consequences. This story is no longer just about guardianship. It has become a battle to reclaim power, voice, and control in a city where emotions, fame, and conspiracies always go hand in hand. And Drew, though unaware, is becoming the next target of the 2 most dangerous women in Port Charles, women who know how to manipulate emotions, create stories, and most importantly, know when to form an alliance to destroy a common threat. And once the undercurrent begins, it won't stop until Drew loses everything he thought he had in his hands. Maxie is falling into the center of a dangerous power spiral that she wasn't prepared for. When things seemed to be improving for her at Deception, where she was establishing her leadership role, creative direction, and becoming the face of a new generation of strong women, an unexpected ultimatum from Tracy fell like a harsh warning. Either Maxie must relinquish control in the company's internal management structure, or she will face total exclusion from decisions regarding Deception's legacy. This ultimatum was not just a threat, it was the first step in a deep strategy Tracy had been planning for a long time. When she realized that Maxie's influence was growing stronger and seriously threatening the power Tracy has been quietly maintaining in the shadows. This story is no longer just a conflict between two individuals. It is a clash between two generations, between Maxie, representing boldness, creativity, and a willingness to experiment, and Tracy, representing the old guard, conservative, seasoned, willing to sacrifice any principle to maintain her position at the table. What Maxie has built at Deception is no longer just media campaigns or brand image. It is an expanding network of influence, from the design team, marketing group, to new investors that Maxie herself has connected and persuaded. She doesn't need a title to be recognized. She has the credibility, the influence, and most importantly, the trust of the people who operate the company every day. Tracy sees this, and she can't let it continue. She begins to intervene in financial contracts, introducing stricter terms in board meetings, and quietly regaining voting rights in shares Maxie didn't know had been secretly transferred through intermediaries. The more successful Maxie becomes, the more relentless Tracy is. And when Maxie's successful campaigns start attracting media attention, with her being called the creative soul of deception, that's when Tracy delivers the ultimatum: either Maxie steps back, or Tracy will use her financial and legal power to completely destroy her position in the company. Maxie understands this is not an empty threat. With someone like Tracy, any action is well calculated, and often there's no turning back. But Maxie is no longer the young girl of the past, easily pushed into a corner without reacting. She knows that if she compromises, she will lose everything she has worked so hard to build. And more importantly, if Tracy wins, Deception will fall back into the hands of the old generation, where every decision is made based on power, not vision. This story has now gone beyond an internal battle. It has become a test for the future of Deception, whether the company will continue to grow under the leadership of those who dare to innovate, or whether it will be controlled by those in power who fear being replaced. Maxie's situation becomes even more dangerous as Tracy begins using underhanded tactics, leaking internal rumors to the press, bringing up Maxie's past mistakes, and implying that she lacks the legal capability to handle high-level financial contracts. Every strike is calculated to undermine the trust of Maxie's associates, isolating her, forcing her to choose between retreating quietly or confronting directly in an uneven battle. Maxie understands that to win, she needs more than passion or righteousness. She needs allies, those who believe in her vision, willing to stand by her not for immediate gains but for the long-term future of the company. And that's when she begins to rebuild her strategy. She approaches each individual in the executive team, sharing her long-term development plans, rekindling their pride in what Deception has achieved under the new generation's leadership. She doesn't try to topple Tracy, she simply shows that Tracy is no longer suited for the role of control. The story is shifting from the boardroom to the media backstage, where articles praising Maxie as the woman redefining beauty in the new era are appearing more and more. Tracy, although still holding influence in the old investment files, is beginning to realize that Maxie isn't just resisting, she's counterattacking. Skillfully, subtly, but with great danger. And in this blurry line, one thing is becoming clear. Deception is no longer Tracy's legacy. It belongs to a new generation. But to keep it, Maxie will have to enter the fiercest battle of her life, where everything she has believed in, loved, and fought for will be tested to its limits. And if she fails, she will lose not only the company, but her faith in herself. Lois is slowly being pushed into an extremely dangerous situation, where everything around her, from personal relationships to the trust she had built, is starting to crack due to a secret that has been hidden for too long. That secret, which she once believed could be kept in the dark, is now being gradually pulled into the light. And the most serious issue is that no one in the family can turn a blind eye anymore. Lulu and Chase, the ones who once placed their trust in Lois, are now taking action, and they are directly threatening both her safety and the wall of silence she had constructed. For a long time, Lois kept quiet about Joe's true origins, believing that revealing the truth would only cause harm and push the family into a series of unnecessary conflicts. But the more she tried to hide it, the more she created a web of tangled lies, distorted stories, and abnormal behaviors that now can't be reasonably explained. Lulu, with her maternal instincts and sharp intuition, begins to notice the holes in the story about Joe's past. Small details, Lois's evasions, Brooklyn's worried glances at her mother, all of this begins to raise a major question in Lulu's mind. Who is Gio really? Unable to stay on the sidelines any longer, Lulu starts investigating, and what shocks her most is not the truth about Gio, but that Lois, the woman who was once seen as a strong and genuine role model, was the one directly manipulating and controlling all the information about the boy. Chase, who has become more deeply involved with those connected to the situation, can't ignore it either. As a police officer, he can't allow a child to live under an unclear identity. But as a man full of feelings and responsibility, he understands that an impulsive action could cause everything to collapse. So, Chase and Lulu don't choose to confront her head-on, they act in their own way, gathering data, connecting clues, and slowly putting Lois in a position where she will have to face the truth. Lois, realizing the tightening grip around her, starts to panic. Not just out of fear of being discovered, but because she knows that if the truth is revealed in the wrong way, not only will she lose everyone's trust, but Brooklyn will also be pulled into a whirlwind of doubt. Worse still, Gio, the boy she had protected like her own flesh and blood, will have to face an identity that he might not be ready to accept. Lois begins to fumble in her speech, her actions become inconsistent, and her closest loved ones start to suspect that she's hiding more than they imagined. The danger Lois is facing doesn't just come from Lulu and Chase, but from within herself. She is confronting the burden of past choices made in moments of crisis, out of love, to protect life, but built on a foundation of lies. And now, those choices are backfiring. Lulu no longer wants to hear excuses. She wants the truth. Chase no longer protects the silence. He wants transparency. And in the face of these increasingly clear demands, Lois is being pushed into a corner, where she must choose, continue hiding and risk everything, or step out of her shell and accept the consequences that the truth will bring. A major change is coming, no longer in the future. It has already started, and it's infiltrating every corner of this family's life. Lois, who once controlled everything with skill and wisdom, is now forced to face the one thing she cannot manipulate, the moment the truth exposes itself. And when Lulu and Chase act, nothing can keep it quiet any longer. A collapse is imminent, and Lois, though she has done everything out of love, may lose it all because of the very thing she tried to protect too carefully. Mac has just received a thick dossier marked with bold red, classified, stamps, documents that had been hidden for a long time, related to a case that seemed to have fallen into oblivion. The fire at Sunny's old apartment, which was assumed to be a mere accident with no criminal suspicion. But what's inside that file leaves Mac stunned. The details. The forensic reports that were kept secret, the testimonies never brought to light, and the excerpts from the covert recording system, all point to the fact that the fire was not an accident. It was an intentional arson. And the person behind it is likely connected to a string of violent acts and internal purges within Port Charles's criminal underworld. This new information not only upends what Mac had believed, but it also proves that a very sophisticated adjustment has been made, an intentional shift in the way criminal forces are operating in Port Charles. In the past, Sunny was known for controlling everything tightly, transportation routes, financial partners, and even secret political connections within the city. But this arson, occurring right on Sunny's own turf, in his most private space, was never fully investigated. Who stopped the investigation? Who obscured the records? And most importantly, who was behind it? Mac knows these questions are not just about the past. They are the spark for a new madness that's beginning to rise. Because if someone was powerful enough to infiltrate Sunny's personal space, and to do so without leaving clear legal traces, then it means a new power structure is quietly being established. And Sonny, although still holding his position on the surface, may have been manipulated or even pushed out of the power center long before he realized it. Mac begins to dig deeper. The links between the fire and a series of disappearances around the same time are re-examined. The names of Sonny's former allies, who have quietly withdrawn or disappeared, are now being placed on the investigation list. Financial reports from abandoned apartments near the scene are cross-checked with underground transactions. And step by step, a new picture emerges. The fire was not just a standalone event, but the starting point of a series of disjointed events within the underworld. Mac understands that if he continues, he may uncover the names of the big players, those who once teamed up with the law to protect Port Charles's public face. But he also knows that if he stops, Port Charles will continue to sink into a madness that no one can control. So, he doesn't stop. The new adjustment is becoming clear, not from the legal system, but from the criminal forces rewriting the rules of the game. The fire from years ago was the earliest warning of that change, but it had been ignored for too long. Now, as Mac is forced to confront it, he knows he is entering a more dangerous maze than any case he's ever handled. And when the truth comes to light, it won't just shatter Sonny's untouchable image, it may tear apart the entire underworld order that has been silently running the city. A place where everyone thought they knew the game. But in reality, they were just pawns in a bigger, darker, and crazier game than anyone could imagine. Dante and Lulu sat together in a quiet space, where what seemed like simple conversations were slowly unveiling one of the greatest psychological storms they had faced in years. Rocco, their shared son, was silently sinking into a crisis that neither of them had truly recognized as serious enough before. The struggles he was experiencing were no longer limited to surface-level issues like distraction, rebellion in class, or defiant stares at adults. They had begun to seep into the very core of who he was, a place where hurt, confusion about family, and feelings of abandonment were coalescing into an unpredictable chaos. Lulu was the first to speak, her hand trembling slightly as she mentioned Rocco's absences from school, his avoidance of therapy sessions, and the fact that he had recently been found wandering alone at night without any clear reason. Despite trying to remain calm, Lulu couldn't hide the confusion and guilt she felt as she watched the child she had once raised with all her love now slipping further away from her embrace. She confessed to Dante that perhaps the years of being absent, during the time she was unconscious and unable to be a part of her son's life, had left irreparable cracks. But it was at that moment that Dante, his eyes heavy with sorrow and his voice low, admitted that even when Lulu was absent, he had never truly understood their son. Rocco had always been quiet, always obedient to the point of being eerie, and perhaps it was this pleasantness that had caused them both to miss the warning signs. The conversation between them gradually shifted from personal emotions to a concerning reality. Rocco wasn't just suffering from a psychological disorder, he was being targeted by some force. As Dante investigated a series of recent incidents involving school violence, he discovered that Rocco's name appeared in the list of a group of teenagers involved in dangerous behavior, lured by outsiders from beyond the school. Anonymous texts, calls from unknown numbers, and especially the fact that Rocco had been found carrying a sharp object in his backpack, all of this could not have been coincidental. Lulu, though extremely confused, quickly realized the severity of the situation. She couldn't hesitate any longer. Together, they decided to review everyone who had interacted with Rocco, from teachers and friends to individuals who had been near places he frequented. Meanwhile, Dante delved into police records, searching for any connections between youth grooming organizations and the areas Rocco often visited. What he uncovered wasn't just a group of strangers, it was an organized network. One that targeted children struggling with emotional issues, broken families, or lack of direction, manipulating and exploiting them for dark purposes. This discovery shocked both Dante and Lulu. It revealed a real threat, not only to Rocco but to numerous families in Port Charles. And Rocco, because he bore the surname of two people who had confronted powerful criminal forces, was becoming the vulnerable yet valuable target in the eyes of these predators. A true disaster was beginning to take shape. It wasn't just about losing their child emotionally. Dante and Lulu were facing the very real danger of losing him in the literal sense, falling into the hands of a world where they wouldn't be able to save him if they continued delaying. The people targeting Rocco weren't just random predators, they were part of a dangerous network that knew how to manipulate emotions, turning herd into dependence and turning children into tools. The conversation between Dante and Lulu was no longer just a dialogue between ex-spouses. It had transformed into a strategic meeting between two parents desperately trying to prevent the loss of their child. They couldn't turn back time, they couldn't erase Rocco's wounds. But they could, and had to, act. Right now. Before Rocco slipped further into the darkness, before silence became a permanent farewell. And before a catastrophe they couldn't have imagined truly unfolded.